All right, time for a weekly YouTube video. I long QH and I also long BKYI. That's what this is going to be about. Kind of market open long structure stuff. See what happened. Crazy day. Yesterday was break even for me. Lost on BLMZ and then made money on INBS, and that was about it. It was kind of a slow day. I think I was done by like I don't know 11 or whatever time that was. Anyways, QH. So go to QH. QH is really interesting. So QH, China manip ticker from the past, had some amazing charts in the past, is now a penny shitter. And yeah, we'll go see what the structure is. So QH, man, like usually I'm kind of ambivalent to a lot of structures like this. I don't know why Thinkorswim keeps doing this, but like you get this hyper aggressive push. Sorry, you get this hyper aggressive push in the pre-market. The most notable thing here is the volume, is always the volume. Because sometimes you get these pre-market pushes like this, these like hyper-aggressive I'm like low volume, like 100K, 200K. Not super impressive. This was almost reaching 1 million shares on this pump, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's a decent, I mean, it's a massive percent move. And I was like, that's interesting. And then we get this hyper aggressive sell-off right into the 1 minute 200. And this is one of those plays where it's like, well, it is super walked down, traded some decent volume on this push, so there's empty space to rotate into, but a lot of these plays don't really go anywhere. So I told my Discord, was providing commentary on this and BKYI in the morning. So I was like, I'll just keep this on in the corner, right? This is like, I'm not really going to market open long off the 1 minute 200 here. Kind of a wait and see approach, opposed to BKYI where I longed right at technically 931. Different structure, requires different things. Anyway, first notable thing, market open volumes, 800K candle on this dump, right? 800K, significant market open volume. A lot of the best market open longs need some aggressive volume, usually 500,000 shares, ideally, if not more. So I called that out. I was like, hey, there's volume at support on QH, but then what becomes interesting is the push, right? So I did not have a read on the 1 minute 200 here because there was some ass that showed up and there were some bids, but there wasn't like follow-up bids. And I was like, and also I was managing BKYI, kind of looking at that. And I was like, okay, like I have the book open on this. I'll just keep an eye on it. I see it. They pulled the ass and start to aggressively push it with increasing volume. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But the thing you have to understand about longs is that in the vast majority of cases, you cannot chase big. You do not want to chase aggressive, hyper-aggressive moves off of support like this, right? And you definitely... And the most important thing is most times you do not want to long. I am very hesitant to long any shallow pullback, right? Like a lot of 1 minute 9 pullbacks or sometimes even 1 minute 20, depending on where it's setting up, is not low enough. Another way of putting this is the more aggressively something pushes off of support, if you're bullish the structure, if there's bullish things about the structure that you like, in this case, the volume, the walk down, Chinese manipulated penny stock, that type of thing, the more aggressive it pushes off of support, the more aggressive it needs to pull back. Ideally, it will see. I longed Wheeler. I posted a bunch of videos. All my videos have been on my Patreon. So if you join my Patreon, you get access to. I've been doing daily recaps on the Patreon. I do Sunday reviews on the Patreon. I do random stuff about structure. I have a whole midday long video that is hyper relevant to my Wheeler. I longed Wheeler in the midday structure, day one. So when I'm talking about longing Wheeler, I longed Wheeler here on the pullback with the same concept. Hyper aggressive move off support, shallow pullback. Do not long the shallow pullback. Wait for the fat knife, and also like QH, it's knifing back to previous consolidation levels, where a lot of buyers, especially the market maker, bought a lot of stock, right? So it's worth watching. Get back to QH. Same idea. These lows need to get attacked. And not only that, we have 50 cents. So 50 cents could get attacked. So I'm always thinking like on these pullbacks, in terms of like what type of pullback do I want to see, like the main things I'm looking at is what are the nearby lows that people are buying off of that it could get swiped, and half dollar, whole dollar levels, right? 50 cents, obviously, kind of psychological level. Market makers love to swipe half dollar, whole dollar, things like that, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, we get the high. Look how aggressive this is. This is perfect. Creates a big empty air pocket to rotate back into. And this was like my whole long, by the way. I completely missed the rest of this. I should have known, man. Like I should have kept the bullish bias for more rotation because there's still a big empty air pocket to rotate into, but the volume was the big one, man. Look at the volume. Volume number one, always in market conditions. Like, what's the market looking like today? How much strength's in the market? And volume, always. Volume is the most important. Volume is the most important when it comes to this. This pop, it's the most important when it comes to this. It's the most important when it comes to this, right? This is all, like, I'm just, also, in my longs, I longed this. I waited for 50 to get swiped. They did something really interesting on the book. They filled a 200,000 share bid at 50 cents. Completely filled it on this candle. 200,000 shares at 50 cents. I think I posted a YouTube video about ATPC, market open long, that I made like 50 something percent on, or whatever it was. Same idea, where it's like a massive bidder at the bottom of the structure with other bullish factors present, gets filled. And again, it's about intention. You can form some type of intention of like, hey, maybe in this structure, market makers absorbing a bunch of shares, going to rotate it sometime later, right? So I did consider that bullish. And then I learned this from Mikey Underdog. Me and Mikey Underdog both play this sub 50 cent long. Was our best trade of the day. But something I learned from Mikey is paying attention to these previous consolidation levels. We'll see this on the Wheeler chart that I just showed. It's the same idea where it's like it's knifing back into previous consolidations, right? And a lot of times you can make reads on the book. Go to QH here, right? So here's a 200K bid getting filled at 50 cents. Here's that consolidation from before. We see some bid support there. We see the bids holding there. We see the ass start to get pulled. Also, I like the volume. Look at the volume down here, dude. 660K, 680K, 730K, 760. This is trading nice. This ain't some bullshit like this. You know what I mean? What's that ticker, man? Or this type of bullshit. This is big volume. This ain't weak, bid proppy, crack every low bullshit. Anyway, also I like how these lower highs are all right under VWAP, kind of like some little painted VWAP resistance. When a lot of lower highs, when they get all put right next to VWAP on these higher volume names, a lot of times VWAP liquidity gets attacked, right? So I was pretty confident in at least a rotation, past VWAP, probably up to 55 cents, right? And then anything after that was dependent on the reaction, right? So we get a knife, we start getting some knife candles. It keeps knifing back into this consolidation. Big aggressive move, and I'm like, the only problem with this name, again, it's like I didn't know what there's a big empty air pocket, but sometimes like a stock isn't going to come all the way to the, and obviously it came to the highs and more on this name, but it's not always going to do that. It's not always going to come aggressively back up to the highs like that. What do you call it? So it's like it's such a unique pre-market structure that I didn't quite know what to think of the profit potential. Again, the answer probably lied in the absolutely insane volume. Because look at these tricks the market makers do, man. Hyper-aggressive pullback, hyper-aggressive pullback, hyper-aggressive pullback, right? So short trappy in the right structure, right? A little intraday, high day clear out here. I thought the 1 minute 50 would eventually fail. I was even telling Mikey this. I was like, I think the 1 minute 50 might fail here, and it might just knife back through VWAP. And then it just instantly worked and like massively squeezed. That's why I wasn't in it. That's why I didn't catch a larger part of the move. I caught like 25%. I actually thought I did pretty fucking good, to be perfectly honest. But man, it's literally up and look at the Minep up here. Hyper aggressive move off of support, another hyper aggressive move off support, another shallow pullback that got attacked. But then after shallow pullback gets attacked, it becomes a lot more interesting because look at the empty space. Fake $1 resistance. You know, a lot of people probably think $1 is going to hold this down. QH is a crazy stock. Anyways, yeah, nice little, this is a single order. Even if this wasn't a single order, this actually wouldn't even have been a problem because this wick bounced directly off this consolidation level. A nice reaction, man. So I ended up just going in. I can show you this really fast. I ended up just going in early with the idea of like, hey, I'm just going to risk these bids near the 1 minute 200. You know, why to risk it a little bit? But then when it tested 48 again, it started rotating through. Because I think I think on this micro pullback right here, this little micro pullback, they had like a 50 or 70K ask pushing it down, like sub 50 cents. And then combine that with the 200K bid that got filled over here. If it starts to rotate through 50 cents, decently strong in that structure, right? Okay, so that's that trade. The other trade was BKYI. I did try for a scalp off the 1 minute 50 here. That's what this was. Important thing to note, and I call this out on my Discord, the first downtrend break. When you get a high volume downtrend break, the first downtrend break, and I covered this on my Patreon. I have a whole midday long if you want to know about like how to long midday. One of the key things I say is a lot of times the first downtrend break, if you draw like the lower trend line like this, a lot of times it stalls and fails, right? And a lot of times I won't even try to long down here. Like this is actually quite rare. The only reason I took it was because of how hyper aggressive it was down the lows, right? Got super, super aggressive at the lows here. They put up, they swiped these lows and they started reclaiming it with a bunch of bids. Sorry, I'm messing up this thing really bad. Okay. Anyways, let's actually go back to the long. Market open long. Okay, this is great. This is my long. They took a market open. Let's go over it. By the way, QH is currently rotating. Currently rotating, by the way. Could actually rotate hyper aggressively. Sorry, I'm thinking if this was like a big brain long, I should have been in on. In my Discord, I said this reminds me of MLGO a lot. This specific midday structure. Anyway. Look at it go. Look at it go. Oh, it's going. It's going. Now, what's the reaction? See? So how I'm thinking here, I'm not in this at all, so I guess I have no skin in the game, so it doesn't really matter. But, you know, anytime it breaks past these liquidity levels, keep in mind, you got to keep, if you're long, if you're bullish this structure and you think $1 is going to be squeezed, which is what I would, which is what I would lean towards. Oh, what a play. Man, I'm glad I'm not, I have a joke with a few of my short friends called Trade Zero Edge. Because Trade Zero, you can't short under $1. So anytime you get a strong penny runner, we're like, Trade Zero Edge, you can't short it. This is a Trade Zero Edge. No, wait. But what I was going to say before this happened in real time is when an extended stock is breaking past lower highs like this, it can often be a good idea to sell some in case of long traps, you know, kind of like SINT yesterday. I was long SINT. Okay, I was actually long this on a similar idea. Even though there's actually multiple bearish factors on this that I should have considered. But I did play this very well. I was very happy how I played this, where I long this off of this, again, aggressive push. Here's some higher lows, aggressive push off of support, fat knife. I longed into the fat knife, right? Bouncing off of these previous levels, right? But here's these lower highs, painted lower highs, painted lower highs. I sold not only on the push in the 6 here, but also on this push into the 6.4s, because this is a classic like me. I used to short these back when I used to only short and never long. This is also the problem with longing and shorting, is sometimes you're going to be in long and then a really nice short comes along and you're like, oh maybe I shouldn't have been long biased in this midday structure. Maybe I should have waited for the rotation to short it, right? Um, and you could determine that based on the bullish and bearish factors present. The main bullish factors: A, market wasn't showing a lot of strength yesterday in the pre-market and market open. B, there was a lot of higher lows. You can actually see the higher lows: higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. A million higher lows, and then a big just like how there's empty air pockets to the upside, there's empty air pockets to the downside. And that's how these types of fades happen, right? Pretty much filling back the whole gap that it pushed, right? So, anyway, that would be the idea of selling above this painted 92 level, right? This painted 92 level. And then, yeah. Man, hyper. I wonder if this is going to top soon. What a move, dude. I can't believe I only caught 15 cents of this, or whatever, 13 cents of this. Man, this thing's up 100% from entry. That's insane. Entry was here. What a ticker, man. Sometimes you look at these, and I think the volume, dude. The volume is always like the missing volume and structure. Obviously structure, but it's really the volume with the structure, right? That could give you some confidence. Right. Anyway, go back to. I just said this is such a interesting. I love these plays, man. Oh, so I was taking some screenshots. Okay, I'm gonna leave all these screenshots here. This is a happy face pattern that I didn't hit. But let's talk about the pre-market structure on BKYI. So first of all, first thing we notice, nice volume, dude. Look at the volume on the push. Got to look at the volume on the push. 700K in the pre-market on like a 1.5 million float stock. Really nice to see. Another bullish factor: aggressive walk down from highs. Aggressive walk down from highs. A lot of extended stocks. So if you get a stock that's extended, so let's just say it's up 100% like this in the pre-market, a lot of the best short trap like rotations will happen later, that have the potential to squeeze these highs a lot. And we'll see this on Wheeler. We saw this on many other plays. But a lot of times they start out, how the consolidation starts out is an aggressive pullback from highs, right? So, and then we had extreme bid-ask manipulation. We talked about this before, where a market maker will flash like outrageous size in the pre-market, and you'll see this especially on these plays that are that pop after 7 a.m. that trade a lot of volume. You'll see a lot of intense bid-ask manipulation, where a market maker, for example, I think it was like here off the 1 minute 20, threw up 130,000 shares on the bid. Now they pulled it and it knifed, but I said in my Discord, it's not that you see 130K on the bid and you go long, right? The book is not that simple. Big bid, go long is an oversimplified way of thinking about how the book works, about its importance. I always say the book is what you look at the end, right? I'm looking at the volume first. I'm looking at the structure. I'm looking at market conditions. I'm trying to get better at this type of thing, where kind of the stuff, today we had a lot more gappers and a lot more volume in the pre-market than yesterday. And unsurprisingly, we're seeing a lot more strength today than we saw yesterday. Yesterday was pretty much dead at like 11 a.m. Today we're seeing continuation. So something to note, right? So anyway, these big bid asks, it can let you know about you could form a thesis of like, what's the intention of the market maker, right? It's like, what are they using these bid asks to do in terms of chart paint, and what's the possible liquidity trap, and how, what bias should I have, and what's my entry, that type of thing. So anyways, another bullish factor, this is really important, and this is also why I was quite bullish Wheeler. So I longed Wheeler midday, and a big part of Wheeler midday was that it was in its first pullback structure. And the more and more this happens, the more and more bullish I consider this factor, where if you look at this is the first real pullback of the push. And I don't really consider this to be a significant pullback. I'm talking about a structure where short sellers, especially retail short sellers, are able to participate with size, right? And it's on these pullback structures, right? It's on these little fake weaknesses, right? Uh, so, first structure is really the best structure for a short squeeze, right? And then you have to look at the chart paint, right? There's a couple of rules of thumb I have about a lot of this stuff that kind of keeps me out of trouble, right? First rule of thumb, just like QH, when you get an overly aggressive move off support, you do not want a lot of retail long shallow pullbacks. Um, I thought maybe this aggressively pushes up to 2 and then comes and knifes all the way back down, maybe even sub VWAP and there's an entry. Something like that. Just keeping my mind open, like, what's the possibilities? But I see this hyper aggressive move, and I'm like, all right, like, I'm not going to long the first shallow pullback in this. I'm just going to wait. Second thing I tend to do is I don't tend to long between like 9, especially like 9:10 to market open, right? I usually think if I'm kind of undecided about what to do, which is a lot on most plays in terms of pre-market, I'll just wait for market open to see what happens. And a lot of times if stocks do rotate at like 9:15, 9:20, 9:25, I am A, not in them, and B, it's a potential bearish factor. A lot of times, you'll see this, this is why when stocks get heavily walked down in the open, it's bullish, right? Because it's so easy for a market maker to control the selling in the pre-market. It's the same thing on the upside. A lot of times when you get aggressive rotations at like 9:20, 9:25, 9:30, a lot of times those can just knife at open, or maybe they do one liquidity push and then knife, right? Like it's actually, it makes the long worse. The more strength in the open something's showing, the worse of a long it is. That's pretty much how it works. Sorry guys, I didn't make an edit. I was saying that in this structure, it was bid propping on VWAP going into open, right? So a lot of times the market open longs, I see the empty space above 2, and I'm also trying to think of, a lot of times you're trying to think of what support levels they could swipe. I see higher lows on VWAP. I'm like, okay, that'd be nice. That'd be nice to maybe dip back under VWAP, swipe that support level, and then see just, it totally depends on the market open action, depends on the volume, depends on the bids on the book, the ask on the book. There's a lot of information you don't know until market open happens, right? So we see market open happen, and we can actually go directly to the book here. By the way, I the edit, this was hours and hours after I did the first part of this video, and QH went all the way to almost $2, which is insane. What an insane move. Anyway, go to market open action here. So we get an immediate 9:30 push, which in like 99 times out of 100, you're never going along, right? Especially on a stock that's extended. The only time like a 9:30 a.m. push makes sense to instant long is when a stock is super bottomed out. ASST from like 4 or 5 days ago was an example of this. I made a video on that I believe is on my Patreon. It's I posted a lot of videos on the Patreon that are not on YouTube, not on Twitter, and nothing like that. But anyway, this is not that example. This is pretty far up in the range. We have that VWAP support. Pushes, paints $2 again, trades a bunch. It's trading like, I think in the first like 20 seconds, this was already at like 600, 700K volume. So I knew the volume was going to be there. Big knife, swipes at 185 level. I see the bids at the bottom, right? And I do see the ask up higher, but I'm pretty convinced by the pre-market structure, the volume, and the manip that it can still be a good play. It just comes back up. I see them soak off the 190 bids, and I long into the 190 bids, and this is the 931 long, right? Off the 190 bids. And then we get bid follow-up, we get bid follow-up, we get more bid follow-up, but I do want to pay attention to this, right? Because I do want to talk about profit taking. Again, a lot of times when it comes to profit taking, it's helpful to know what like long trap patterns are at the top, what is bearish price action at the top, what a possible short signal would be. And this is a good example where we get this hyper aggressive push, tons of volume, which is going to come into play later on the rotation. But this, so we get a 1 minute 20 tap and then a hyper aggressive, like 10% green candle push towards highs. And the thing about 1 minute 20 is 1 minute 20 could be a great long, but a lot of times 1 minute 20 is a great long the farther down in the range it is, right? Like if you're in the beginning of a move, like say you're in the beginning of like an intraday move on a stock that's up like 40, 50%, 1 minute 20 could be nice there if the volume's coming in and that type of thing. But a lot of times, the higher and higher and higher you go into the range, and the more liquidity squeezes you have, right? At this point, this is up like 140% or something. Massive market open push. And keep in mind, that's also bearish, right? Hyper aggressive market open pushes creates a lot of lower highs, creates a big pocket to roll back down into. So it's another bearish factor. But I have an entire section in my Discord, which you get access to by signing up for the Patreon, about failed 1 minute 20 rotations, right? And you'll see that they tend to fail when they're this high in the range, right? So when I see a big aggressive green candle like this push towards highs, my first thought is already thinking like, if this stalls, it's bearish. So like I immediately want to sell. And then we get a little 1 minute, like almost like a little 1 minute flag consolidation, right? Where retail likes to chase these second little pushes towards highs. The moment that stalls, it's very not good. That being said, I did think, when I was going into this, I was like, you know what, like this has, it has increasing consistent volume making new highs. That's actually a bullish factor. It is, and a lot of times, what I was actually thinking was like, oh, this will another phrase we have in the Discord is long trap and a short trap, which is how extended stocks tend to push, right? They do some hyper aggressive push, longs chase, it stalls really hard, the longs get shaken out, and then it comes back up and does the real push sometime later. Now, I did want to protect myself because my average is kind of all the way up here on a stock that's pretty gapped up. So I got stopped out on the knife past the lows, and then it did end up long trapping to short trapping. I wrote this, if you're running with the smiley faces, I think I've talked about it in YouTube videos before, where I have a joke pattern called the smiley face pattern, and essentially what it is, it's a joke, but it's also very much not a joke, because the liquidity thesis behind it is that the market maker is aggressively dumping this, therefore not only luring in more shorts, often with bad averages, but also shaking out more longs, right? Creates this massive imbalance, especially in low float land on high volume stocks, creates a massive imbalance of short sellers and a lack of longs, right? So, I always, and this is, you'll see this on stronger stocks and stronger markets too. We had we had like a week of these happening over and over and over and over again, like a couple months ago. I think it was in like July. Anyways, I almost never catch these longs because, my longs that that I'm more used to catching is something like Wheeler Day 1, where a stock kind of, instead of smiley face pattern like this straight up, you get an aggressive push, forms a new lower high, we get an aggressive knife back to the consolidation, and you long. See, this makes more sense from a breakdown perspective. Like the liquidity thesis, and I long this, was like these knives are going to bounce off this consolidation support. It's not going to keep going past the 2.4s and down, and then it's going to rotate where, what's the stock? BKYI. Just ultra aggressively rotates and pushes. That being said, it's not like there isn't a read to be made here. It's more of like, it's there are times where you will get aggressive moves off of support like this and will knife for a better long later, right? It's more of a probability thing, but there are bullish factors. I mean, the lower high paint, so the long trap and the short trap potential, the aggressive selling, the empty air pocket, the crazy volume. There's a lot of stuff going on display. But it's hard to factor every single bullish factor and also combine it with the thesis of like, I need to go long on these fake VWAP rejects because it might just keep going, right? Fake VWAP resistance on a rotation. They throw up a bunch of bids. I think also some asks on the book started to get pulled over here. We could kind of look at that really quickly. You can actually see some of the asks start getting pulled. This bidder starts holding, and they even threw. And then I actually saw this in real time. I was like, oh, they threw up 116,000 shares on the bid all the way down here, which is a little too far away from me to justify like some crazy chase entry up here. But I thought it was interesting. It was also, the guy was also right here. This was 95K on the bid. I actually didn't see this in real time. I saw this one. But yeah, very, very, very interesting stuff. So I think that's it for today. Information down below about the Discord and the Patreon, and there's a ton of stuff on there that you're free to not free, as in you have the freedom of giving me $50. But there's stuff on there. So we talk about a lot of this structure. We talk a lot about structure, a lot about liquidity traps, a lot about volume, and yeah, you'll see you have a good idea of how I trade. I do short. Just I find long reads to be a bit easier in many contexts, so I tend to make them more, but I am still open to shorting. I guess I'm just like very hyper specific about like what I want to do when it comes to shorting. So anyways, you guys have a good one, and I will see you whenever I make another YouTube video.